I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. Is the Pope taking a second trip to the U.S.? We'll find out what it may mean for one city. Plus, a local priest is honored for his dedication to Catholic-Jewish dialogue.
It was meant as a tribute to Monsignor Garrity, which we enjoyed participating in.
And you won't believe what some people give the Pope. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, on Sunday, Pope Benedict XVI made a groundbreaking announcement at the end of his visit to Milan for the church's triennial World Meeting of Families. Benedict told a reported 1 million in attendance that the next meeting would be in Philadelphia in 2015, and he planned to be there, God willing. Well, the news sent a wave of excitement and hope throughout the city, which has been roiled to its core by recent revelations of sexual abuse by clergy. Former head of priest personnel, Monsignor William Lynn, is awaiting a jury's verdict on whether he will be the first church official ever convicted for helping cover up cases of clergy molestation. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Archdiocese, one of the most storied and solidly Catholic in the nation, faces an unprecedented wave of closures and mergers, not to mention a staggering $12.3 million operating loss for the last fiscal year. Well, the task of repairing the fractured archdiocese has been a daunting one for Philadelphia's relatively new Archbishop, Charles Chaput. However, Rocco Palmo, a Currents contributor whose blog Whispers in the Loggia ranks him as one of global Catholicism's most prominent chroniclers, is confident Chaput is not only the right man for the job, he was undoubtedly chosen to lead the archdiocese out of its dire straits. I spoke with Rocco earlier about what the 2015 World Meeting of Families event will mean to Philadelphia and to its archbishop. All right, Rocco, the news is out. We have Philadelphia hosting the next World Meeting of Families in 2015, God willing, the words of Pope Benedict. What has been the reaction so far? I know it's a huge deal for you guys. You made the cover of the Daily News, the People's Paper out there in Philadelphia, so I could feel the excitement. What's been the reaction?
Well, the reaction, Liz, has been very, and if you ask me, surprisingly positive. It's been a very long 16 months here in the Archdiocese. We've arguably been through the toughest situation any American diocese has been through in the last 50 years. And so, my parents and members of my family have always talked so warmly about the experience of 1979 and John Paul II's first visit. I never thought we'd see a pope coming again to Philadelphia, but as the Holy Father said the other day, God willing, here he comes again.
And you believe that this meeting will be the focus of the most massive overhaul of Philadelphia Catholicism in nearly 2 centuries, as you write in your blog. Now, as a member of the Pastoral Council of the Archdiocese, are you close to talks, and how big a role do you think that this event will play?
Well, I think, again, you have to look at the family meeting and everything else going on here. You can't look at each. There are many moving pieces going on right now, and you can't look at any one of them in a vacuum. Obviously, until now, the focus on the church in Philadelphia has been dominated by the trial of the former head of the clergy here, Monsignor William Lynn. He's the first U.S. church official to be charged with cover-up, and the trial's run 11 weeks, and the jury is now deliberating on a verdict. But you also have, and one thing which has hurt our people very deeply, is the closing of 34 schools, which is going to be taking place over these next 2 weeks. It's by far the largest cycle of closings an American diocese has ever done in terms of Catholic education, and a parish planning process is already beginning that could end up closing a quarter of the parishes of the Archdiocese. So it's, people just feel there's been a lot of fatigue, there's been a lot of anger, there's been a lot of hostility toward the Archbishop, toward priests, who have had to carry out these decisions, and so we've been waiting for some good news.
So
but really, what's happening now is that the grand jury broke open a lot of frustration, a lot of mismanagement and concerns over it, and really kind of set the stage for the remaking of Catholic culture in Philadelphia, because as it existed until the second grand jury, the Catholic culture of the Archdiocese was more, late 19th, early 20th century and 21st century, and this is something what we talk about in terms of the new evangelization in the church, that, it wasn't speaking to people, and people were just quietly shuffling away.
And in light of everything you just shared with us, and it really is such a challenge, our hearts have been with you, obviously, throughout this entire challenge. Do you think by choosing Philadelphia, this is in a way Pope Benedict's way of beginning to help you heal?
I think so, because even if, the Holy Father never schedules a trip 3 years in advance. It's unheard of in every papal visit I've seen. Usually you're talking 4 to 6 months in advance. But it's a way, the whole role of Peter from Jesus in the Gospels is, Peter, confirm your brothers and sisters in the faith. So this is the Pope seeking to do his job for a place that needs it terribly. But it's also, I have to say, a vote of confidence in our Archbishop. 4 years ago, the Holy Father went to New York and Washington, and Philly was flyover country. So two things changed. The second grand jury happened, and the Pope has his own man in Philadelphia, Archbishop Chaput. One very interesting thing here. Normally, the bishops' conferences of the world are asked to recommend a city in each of their countries for an event like this. But Archbishop Chaput was actually approached by the Vatican and asked if Philadelphia will be open to hosting something like this. And he said it would have to be a much smaller event than it has previously been, no more than 60 to 80,000 people. And even with that provision there, the Holy Father still chose Philadelphia. So this is very much where he wants it to be, not just to encourage the Archdiocese, but because obviously in New York State, you guys know this well, the challenges to family life in the United States are rising. And so it was important to the Pope to have this gathering, not, again, just in Philadelphia, but in North America, because of how much of a sea change there's been these last couple of years in terms of marriage and the family.
And Rocco, I'm so happy you brought that up, because in looking at the events over in Milan, this is obviously a very significant and sometimes very emotional event. The state of marriage and family life has been a major focus for Pope Benedict, especially this year, and John Paul II's Love and Responsibility, Theology of the Body, and Letter to Families explored the topic at length at well. How much of an impact do events like World Meeting of Families have on advancing the efforts of both leaders?
Well, the World Meeting of Families is something which is still kind of evolving in terms of its definition and profile. It's held every 3 years. It was begun by John Paul II in 1994. But it's really at a state right now of a kind where World Youth Day was before it came to the United States for the first time in 1993 in Denver. That, it's an event, again, still rising in profile, but when you look at the fruits of World Youth Day, how many vocations, whether it be lay vocations, vocations to consecrate a life for the priesthood, that, the greatest strength the Church has is our unity and diversity. And it's events like this that bring the Church together from all sorts of experiences, cultures, and places. And so, and it's the great tapestry of Catholicism. And so, so again, as this event gets bigger and bigger, or at least gets more of attention, especially in the United States, I think it's going to be a very rich kind of experience for people, because again, so much of what we've seen these last 10 years, especially whether here in this city or elsewhere, has been scandal, crisis, difficulty, the worst face of the Church, the most difficult side of Catholic life. And so, it's to quote the Holy Father, he once said, we have something positive to offer as a church, and a lot of people have been looking for that from us, I think, in the States these last years, and an event like this you couldn't ask for a better showcase.
All right, Rocco, and as you said before we started this interview, this is the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're very happy for you guys, and we're definitely going to keep track of it and follow it with you. But thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Love talking to you.
Always, Liz. See you in 2015. Come on down.
Absolutely. We'll be there. And we have more currents ahead. More rallies for religious freedom planned. We'll hear more about that after the break. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. Following a similar tactic used back in March, Stand Up for Religious Freedom will hold a second round of rallies this Friday. The protest will be held in cities across the country. Organizers say this is a direct response to the Obama administration's trampling on religious institutions' rights of conscience. Earlier this year, the administration announced that most religious organizations would be required to cover contraception and some abortion-inducing drugs in their employee health plans. At last count, 154 rallies were scheduled. The communications director for the nationwide effort told Catholic News Agency that more locations will likely trickle in before Friday. Here in New York City, rallies will take place outside Congressman Gary Ackerman's office in Bayside, Queens, and outside Federal Hall on Wall Street. Among those scheduled to appear at the downtown Manhattan rally, pro-life activist Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Martin Luther King. And in what could be yet another sign of the erosion of religious freedom in the U.S., an appeals court in New Mexico has ruled that a photo studio cannot refuse to photograph the commitment ceremony of a same-sex couple. According to the Albuquerque Journal, the court said that the photo studio violated the New Mexico Human Rights Act. In an earlier ruling, a judge said the studio is a public accommodation, an entity that provides services to the public and cannot refuse services based on a host of issues, including race, religion, or sexual orientation. The studio said its refusal to photograph the same-sex ceremony was not discrimination, but a reflection of the owner's religious and moral beliefs. The Alliance Defense Fund is representing the studio. And breaking news out of San Francisco. An appeals court has refused to re-examine the constitutionality of California's Proposition 8. That measure affirms marriage in the state as between a man and a woman. Wednesday's decision means the case could head to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, pro-life activists are planning demonstrations outside this year's Democratic National Convention in North Carolina. According to the website Life News, participants plan on highlighting President Obama's radical pro-abortion policies. That's a quote. Last week, Planned Parenthood, the #1 abortion provider in the country, endorsed the president for a second term. The Susan B. Anthony list, which works to get pro-life candidates elected, has thrown its support behind Republican challenger Mitt Romney. And Romney has tapped a man with some pro-life credentials to head his transition team. He's chosen former Utah Governor Mike Leavitt. As was first noted by pro-life blogger Jill Stanek, back in 2005, when Leavitt was the Health and Human Services Secretary, he sent out a memo that is, ordering that the Born Alive Infants Protection Act be aggressively enforced. That law extends legal protection to infants born alive from failed abortion attempts. According to Politico, Republican insiders say Leavitt is a strong candidate to be White House Chief of Staff should Romney win that election. The Vatican Secretary of State is the latest to speak out on the Vatileaks scandal. Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone told Italian state-run television station RAI that Pope Benedict is not intimidated by attacks of any type. He calls the latest attacks fierce, divisive, and organized. Bertone says that the Pope's closest collaborators are sustained by the Holy Father's great moral force. Meanwhile, a Vatican judge interviewed the man who is at the center of the investigation of the leaked documents. As reporter Paolo Gabrielli was formally questioned with his 2 lawyers present, Gabrielli is accused of having papal documents in his apartment. He has promised to cooperate with investigators. An Italian investigative journalist published dozens of private documents from Pope Benedict in a recently released book. The head of the Bishops' Conference of Bosnia and Herzegovina says there is a well-formulated strategy to eliminate Catholics from his country. According to Bishop Franjo Karmaritzi, politicians have said in personal conversations that Catholics had, quote, no business being in Bosnia. The bishop tells aid to the church in need that Catholics there have received on only a fraction of international aid given to the country. He says it's not good for Bosnia to exclude an entire ethnic group, and that, in his view, Catholics of Croatian origin are not guests, but the oldest ethnic group. And a cardinal who played a major part in the end of the civil war in his country has died. Rome Reports has more.
Cardinal Rodolfo Quesada Toruño has passed away at the age of 80 in Guatemala. He was retired, but most recently he had served as the Archbishop of Santiago de Guatemala. In the 1990s, he held a key role in the country's peace-building process. In fact, his mediation helped end the country's 36-year-old conflict.
En la medida en que tengamos más cristianos,
Until we have more Christians, not only with religious cultural roots, but with a truly personal faith, who can discover their vocation to holiness, and in their personal lives, will we have a more humane and just society.
Back in the year 2003, John Paul II named him a cardinal. He took part in the conclave that elected Benedict XVI, but on March 8th, when he turned 80, he lost his voting rights. With his death, the number of cardinal non-electors is down to 87, while the number of cardinal electors is 122.
And stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. Coming up, notes of praise for local priests.
No matter what your faith is or your denomination of worship or religious belief, music transcends culture and language and things like that, and all people can appreciate music.
Welcome back. While people in some countries are fighting over matters of faith, here in the U.S., various religious communities are able to come together to find common ground and respect one another's differences. Take as one example, the Catholic-Jewish Relations Council of Northeast Queens, one of many interreligious groups working tirelessly in the Diocese of Brooklyn. This past weekend, they honored a priest who has dedicated much of his work to dialogue between the Catholic and Jewish communities.
On behalf of the Catholic-Jewish Relations Council, I'd like to say thank you for being here, and a special thanks to some very important people.
We're in St. Andrew Avellino, which is my home parish, and we had a jazz concert that was a fundraiser for the work that the council does. The council is made up of Christians and Jews that started in Queens. Bishop McGovern, who was our previous bishop of this diocese, and Jewish leaders that thought it was important after Vatican II to define our relationships with our Jewish brothers and sisters and look at Judaism in a new light.
The Catholic-Jewish Relations Council of Northeast Queens. It's a council that was established a few decades ago, probably in the 50s, I believe, and we're here to further understanding between Catholics and Jews.
We're a monotheistic religion in both traditions, and our tradition comes out of the Jewish religion. And in fact, what used to be called the Old Testament is the Hebrew Bible.
It's one thing for sure, no matter what your faith is or your denomination of worship or religious belief, music transcends color, it transcends language. It's a language unto itself, but it certainly transcends culture and language and things like that, and all people can appreciate music. Particularly in this time, I think people need music because everybody feels the pinch of one thing or another, particularly right now.
Music, that's another way to find our Lord in your soul, because all the arts emanate from Him. So all the wonderful things that you felt about the music here, let it feed your soul and take it out to the world. And always remember that Christ, Jesus Christ, was a practicing Jew.
Duke Ellington and Stravinsky agreed on one point. There's good music and there's bad music. A friend of ours, Michael's and mine, named Rochelle Thompson, who's a jazz singer, called jazz a music of sound scholarship and mathematical art. Well, it was meant as a tribute to Monsignor Garrity, which we enjoyed participating in.
I want to take away that there's probably more in common than we have differences, and that we all work for peace and justice in the world, and to promote love between God's people, God's children.
And Monsignor Garrity is also receiving another honor later this year. DeSales Media, the parent company of NET, is recognizing him as the Pastor of the Year for the Diocese of Brooklyn. Monsignor will receive that award at the annual Bishop's Golf Classic on August 9th. Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. When we return, gifts abound for Pope Benedict. We'll look at some of the strangest that he's received. Finally tonight, when heads of state visit each other, it's customary to exchange gifts. Through the years, occupants of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue have received many personal gifts from the president or prime minister of a foreign land. Back in 1985, the president of Algeria gave Ronald Reagan an embroidered leather saddle. Reagan, of course, loved to go horseback riding. And when President Bill Clinton visited the Vatican in 1994, Pope John Paul gave him a glass mosaic of the Roman Colosseum. But the Holy Father is also on the receiving end of many gifts, and Rome Reports has details on some of the strangest ones that Pope Benedict has received.
It was with this smile that Bulgaria's president told the Pope that his gift simply didn't fit in the papal library. Moments later, it was easy to see why. The gift was this huge 440-pound Easter egg, made of steel and decorated with ruby stones. It may not be a practical gift, but it definitely falls into the list of the 10 strangest gifts that the Pope has ever given or received. Starting in 10th place is another Easter egg. This one weighs much less and it's made of chocolate. It was a gift that the Pope didn't eat, but offered to a juvenile detention center in Rome. In 9th place is the world's smallest Bible. It's a high-tech microchip that holds all the sacred texts. Shimon Peres gave it to the Pope during his visit to the Holy Land. Fortunately, they had a magnifying glass to see it. At number 8 is Bodmer Papyrus, which is the oldest manuscript of the New Testament. It was given to Benedict XVI, and now it's held at the Vatican's Apostolic Library. In 7th place are concerts. These type of gifts are actually quite common during Benedict XVI's pontificate. This one was directed by Riccardo Muti. The concert was a gift from Italy's president. Then there is this one, which was held at Castel Gandolfo. Number 6 is also related to music. On his 81st birthday, the Pope visited the White House. As a gift, President George Bush gave him a collection of country music. At number 5, there is this modern gift. Mexico's TV network Azteca gave the Pope an iPad with 14 hours of traditional Mexican music. It also included a few Mozart songs, so the Pope could enjoy his flight to Mexico.
Sabemos que usted está muy inmerso en la tecnología, que le gusta el Twitter, ¿no? Que tiene su iPad y ahora tiene ese iPod con música mexicana y música clásica para el viaje.
The number 4 spot is this race car wheel, which was given to the Pope by the president of Ferrari, Luca Cordero. The Pope had quite a reaction.
Cose deve fare durante la gara. La Chiesa ha un suo volante difficile. È per questo che noi abbiamo voluto.
In 3rd place is the huge Easter egg given to the Pope by the President of Bulgaria. Because of its size, it may be placed in the Vatican's contemporary art collection museums. In 2nd place, there is this set of 12 dessert plates, given to the Pope by Prince Charles. They include hand-painted flowers from the Garden of Highbrow, which is where the son of the Queen of England lives. But even the prince questioned the practicality of this gift.
I don't know whether we'll do anyhow.
In 1st place is a gift given to the Pope by a German bishop. For his 80th birthday, he was given 20 gallons of beer, so he could toast to his health. But the Pope decided to give the gift to the Swiss Guard. Even though he likes beer, he has always said that his favorite drink is simply orange juice.
And that is all for tonight. Coming up on Wednesday, is it the church's best kept secret? Could be. We'll tell you what we're talking about and hear more about it on Wednesday night. Until then, you can visit us online at currentsny.net and be sure to connect with us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. We end tonight's show with some of the sounds from our earlier report on the Catholic Jewish Relations Council benefit concert. Thank you for watching and have a good night.